So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the meta for the Duelist Cup, and I have realized a huge number of things that make this meta, well, just, you know, a little bit of frowny face. So, first things first, the issue, honestly, not really Tenpai, I'd say, because you somewhat play around Tenpai, So, sometimes you can't win with your favorites and you just have to pick up a deck that just does really well in general. And this has made me realize something pretty drastically annoying about the current meta. So, Dragoon was just released, and Dragoon has this quality about it that makes it fairly hard to deal with. So, if we look at just how Tenpai can deal with the Dragoon, like with their non-engine, I guess, how can we deal with the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon? Well, we can't imperm, so we're going to assume that the Dragoon will be summoned. Imperm cannot remove the Dragoon, it cannot target the Dragoon, that doesn't work. Raigeki, that doesn't work either. It's not destructible via card effects either. And then on top of this, you can't target it with anything, so if we just look at, in general, the Tenpai extra deck, the only thing I believe that can out Dragoon is, like, maybe the Heavenly Spheres. But issue, you can't activate this, except on your opponent's turn. And also, Red Eyes Dark Dragoon is an Omni negate, so they can negate Hieratic Seal. So, yeah, that doesn't work either. So, what cards do you have that work without, like, adjusting for it immediately? We have just Forbidden Droplet. So, yeah, you Droplet, send Guy, non-targeting, negate Dragoon. I guess you have to send, like, a monster, ideally. Sometimes. I think it would be more ideal if you could do, like, Raigeki, chain 1 Raigeki, chain 2 Dragoon, chain 3 Forbidden Droplet. But that's neither here nor there, and you either way, you just need Droplet. And that means, as far as I'm aware, you have just 3 cards that deal with Dragoon, and that's it. So, yeah. This isn't just a Tenpai exclusive issue. There are a bunch of other decks that kind of also have this issue. But just in general, now to deal with Dragoon, all you have is Droplet. So what are people running to kind of help deal with Dragoon? Well, actually, I've been noticing a lot of this. So, Super Poly, this just outs Dragoon. And, of course, there's several different targets for removing Dragoon, I guess, right? Depends on exactly what you're playing, but we have the idea of course, going, depending on exactly what you're able to fit in. We can fit in Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. We also have the other Predaplant Fusion. Doesn't show up. Alright. Dragostapelia. So, this is technically an option as well. So it's Fusion Monster plus any Dark Monster. And then we also have, as well, the Garura, which is annoying to deal with. Just in general, this is pretty brutal. And then there's also the Mud Dragon. So we don't even have to start considering Mud Dragon's targeting protection, but I mean, Mud Dragon also can give you targeting protection, especially useful if you have, like, a mono-type deck, so not very useful here, like Earth, Light, Dark, Earth, Wind, Light, Dark. The attributes in this deck are kind of all over the place. So, yeah. Now, for all of my end boards, I have to start considering, and also while I'm building up my board, I have to start considering Super Poly, so, like, I have to prevent being able to beat Garurud. So 2 monsters with the same type and attribute, but different names. So this deck, I picked this up and tried to use this for the Duelist Cup for one reason, because the amount of DD Crows and also the amount of Bistils was fairly high. And this deck doesn't super care about any of the light or dark monsters being banished in my graveyard, so I thought it would be fine, right? But then I started getting hit and sacked by Super Poly multiple times, and it was awful. So the thing about my inboard is if I put Therian King Regulus on the field alongside my Sharakusai, this is an Earth, this is an Earth, and also they have different types. So I just get Mud Dragon. So that just sucks, and there's not really a whole lot I can do about this. But also, if I am going second, I have Xiamen and Shirakusai on my board a lot of the time. Garura. Two monsters with the same type and attribute, but different names. So, yeah. Not a lot I can do about that. And this really goes to show that you don't really know what you're missing till it's gone. And this kind of reminds me of partially why I decided to pick up Cash in a few of the previous Duelist Cups. So if we actually look at Kashtira, Kashtira has like a small miracle, well, going on whenever you're playing Cash, right? So when I play around Nib, the line is going to be Unicorn grabs Theosis, Theosis special summons Fenrir, Fenrir will go ahead and grab us Rysart, and then we summon Rysart. And then Rysart banish. And this also plays around Maxi somewhat well. And then we just go into a Rysart simply with these three. And the amazing thing about these guys, this is a Psychic Wind. This is an Earth Psychic. So this is specifically not able to be either Garurud or Mud Dragoned because they don't share the same attribute, and they also do not share the same type and attribute. So all of these guys are a bit different. So we don't actually end up getting super polyed unless we were to go ahead and have Rysart and Shangri-Ira on the field at the same time, which is just the thing you have to be aware of. If you're going second and your opponent has a back row that has no response, you just make sure to, if possible, go into just the Rysart and try to skip summoning Rysart if possible. So maybe you add, I don't know, the Tier Cash, or not Scareclaw Cash, I guess it's just mostly Tier Cash, or Kashtira Ogre, you try to put those guys onto the field instead. Even if you don't mill, this plays around the Super Poly. But yeah, Kashtira's been like nerfed into the absolute ground. So we have one copy of Raidsoff, one copy of Fenrir. One copy of Fenrir is just horrible in the mirror when you just randomly get sacked and Rysart just banishes the Fenrir. Fenrir, you're one of Fenrir, banish face down, awful. And then, yeah, that's just how this kind of goes, I guess. So, really makes me kind of miss Cash, because Cash had this insane advantage. Like, it's not necessarily an instant win against every single deck, it's maybe against some, but Kashtira in general, because of, well, somewhat a Rysart and somewhat how the cards function, Cash actually just has a good matchup spread against like everything. Even if it's not like absolutely winning, you just have in general advantage. So if I start with special summon Fenrir, Fenrir effect to add, if you were to ogre me, I can grab Unicorn, and that's just one card, and then I can Unicorn, grab Birth, special summon back Fenrir, for example. And there's a bunch of different like little adjustments you can make for hand traps. And even if the hand traps do affect you, you still end up with some kind of interaction with your engine, which is something that's really powerful about Cash. And the fact that you could play Shifter, I guess, which shut down, well, it shuts down a lot of different decks just immediately and is super hard to play through. Turn one Shifter being really disgusting. Turn 2, going second shifter on the first turn, or going second shifter on the turn 1. They're both pretty disgusting for different reasons. For example, if my opponent has like a max seed, they won't be able to use that effect veiler, Ghost Ogre. All of that is turned off by the shifter. And all of these guys are in general good for going second because we can just special summon these guys and they're a big guy. So even if I were to just special summon the Ogre and this gets ashed, I can ash a guy from your extra deck, deny follow-up or certain plays, and then run over a guy, which is still pretty decent. Kind of makes me miss having this, you know. These guys play around hand traps fairly well, and also you don't get sacked by like as many cards, I guess, right? So some decks can get sacked really hard by Droll. Some decks can be sacked pretty hard by like an Imperm. Maybe it's Ash Blossom. Cash doesn't really get super sacked by these cards. Like you still end up with something. It might not be like a game-winning something. Like if I have Unicorn against Labyrinth, I'm not like celebrating here, right? But at least it's something. Unlike if I were to resolve like Foxy Tune or try to resolve Foxy Tune or Branded Fusion and then getting ashed on that versus getting ashed on Theosis, it's a world of difference, I guess, right? So after all this thinking, it got me thinking, well, what deck could I possibly show up with? So right now we're still only in phase 1, and right now a bunch of the prominent hand traps that we're going to be seeing, I think Viscerals might be lowering in usage soon. We'll see if that's true or not, but the thing about the hand trap lineup is it's been influenced by Gimmick Puppet to a good extent. I'm pretty sure that it must be Gimmick Puppet that has changed this, but essentially where everyone is running right now, aside from like the standard hand traps and whatnot, we have Droll, we have Viscerals, we have Crow, and then we also have still, I guess, Ghost Ogre. People have been running Ghost Ogre more, and honestly it kind of makes sense. Like just for example against like Voiceless Voice, this crap is just irritating in my opinion. So you know, if we summon low places the barrier here, so the only thing you could do about this is like Imperm or Veiler onto the low. But if we Imperm or Veiler onto the low, there's a chance that our opponent has the Serapis. And also, even if we were to Ash the barrier of the Voiceless Voice, it searches again next turn, so we can kind of put the kibosh on that if we Ghost Ogre it instead. And then our opponent has to find access into another barrier, right? So there's that idea as well. And also, it's good against like a lot of decks in general, and Ritual Beasts have fallen off a lot, and I have seen like 0 Ritual Beast players since the new ban list is dropped, you know, since Shifter the 1. So that's neat, I guess. And then also, of course, the other prominent deck, I think, is the one where you abuse the Melodious cards with the Pendulum cards, and it's just pen soup essentially, and then you just go into Apo, Vortex, Warlord Savage, whatever you can get your hands on really. And then you also have Secret Village, and then maybe if they're feeling extra spicy, they'll make Verte and go Dragoon as well. Kind of depends on the person, I guess. But yeah, this pen soup list, of course, Pend and Droll versus Droll and Lockbird, name a more iconic duo. There's no real shot that you can play through the Droll. So yeah, that's the hope, I guess. And then Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit in general, I think is just there's probably a decent choke point to kind of Ghost Ogre. I'm not 100% sure what it would be, but There probably is one. And no one wants to get sacked by FTK, so running some of these cards makes sense. And also, I believe Super Poly should work pretty well against Gimmick Puppets if you get sacked by their hand traps as well. So you have all that going for you, I suppose, right? I guess you can Ghost Ogre the Gimmick Puppet field spell, and that can sometimes stop the FTK if they genuinely have to do it as like a one-card combo and have no extenders. So that's nice, I guess. But now the conditions and criteria we'll have to meet, I think, are pretty brutal. So we'll just take all of these cards out for now. So we'll remove, all of these guys. Oh, let's put the Magma back. And then we'll take out these guys. And you know what, we'll keep that. And honestly, we should keep Edge Blossom as well. It doesn't really matter. We don't necessarily have to run all of these hand traps though. But in general, we'll throw in Maxi as well, actually. Yep. So Maxi. And then Super Poly. And then we'll throw back in the Super Poly targets. So we have Garura, Mud Dragon, and then something like a Starving Venom, maybe. That depends on exactly what our opponent's playing. So, alright. Let's remove all of these guys now, right? Okay. And now this is the pool of generics that we have to take on. And this is before considering, of course, what decks may or may not be kind of meta or what might really be played. So right now I'm seeing somewhat a variety of decks. When I was playing ranked on release, I mean, I was mostly just against Tenpai, Gimmick Puppet, and then Pensu. So I think those are really annoying. And then, of course, 60 card decks are a lot more prominent now because no shifter. But Bistrels are on the rise, so specifically the tier 60s aren't going to be doing like super well here because, you know, aside from like Droll, all of these cards are pretty hard to deal with, in my opinion. Of course, like Super Poly being a very damaging card here, right? And what annoys me greatly, I guess, is if I check Celiac, will I be annoyed by this? Does this negate first and then send? Instead of send, then negate? Yeah, that's annoying. Anyway, that aside, what can we do here exactly? If we're against Tier Limit, we can summon Mud Dragon, change attribute. If we're playing Monotype, we could Super Poly and do that, so that's kind of nice. And then like everything in tier target, so that's cool, I guess, if you could manage that. But all right. If we are playing like Fire King or Snake Eye, you're playing a lot of those fire monsters, which leaves you open to getting hit by like a Garura or Mud Dragon. And if you really want to tech against, there was this card, right? At Ignister, Earth Golem at Ignister, 1 Cyberus monster plus 1 Link monster. So this would get rid of IP and also a Link monster. So this could get rid of like Apo. This can get rid of whatever Link 4 you have. Kind of depends, I guess. Whatever. But alright. Let's see, what can we do here? So the only deck that I know to begin with that plays around all these things is going to be Kashtira to start, right? So Crow doesn't matter. There's nothing in your graveyard that really matters to you if it gets banished. Even if we activate Birth does not target, so that doesn't do anything against us. We also don't really have any light or dark monsters here, so that plays around Bestials. And then we play around Super Poly because of what the typings are in this deck. So that works pretty well. So that's something. How about Vanquished Soul? Vanquished Soul is another deck, I guess, that plays around all of these things, I believe, right? So these guys are all different attributes and also different types. So they have like 0 commonalities. So we're unlikely to get hit by any of these 3. So that's pretty good already, I guess. If a deck is running Super Poly and they have a target, like, for example, with heroes, or I guess like branded, there's not much we can do about that, or maybe like Yubel, except like maybe trying to stop Yubel from being summoned in the first place, I guess is the most we can do about that. But also, a lot of these decks so far have a pretty big issue. So sure, we can play around, well, we can't play around Crow, but we can play around Bestials fairly well with Vanquished Soul. We have consistency issues. So Vanquished Soul's consistency, pretty bad. And then we have Kashtira right now, consistency-wise. You're like basically in shambles. You're in tears. It's really not looking good for you. We'll put it that way. Even if you throw in 3-planet Pathfinder, it's not that consistent. Just without even considering your opponent into the equation, it's not as consistent as you might like it or want it to be. So that's pretty rough. So, what else are we looking at here? If we look at Dinosaur, yeah, you can play around Super Volley at least. So honestly, with how things are right now, and Tenpai being like Tenpai, honestly, it seems like just by looking at the staples here, I feel like you kind of have to go into Secret Village. That, or we can go into the new card. We can go into Diabels. If we go ahead and put Diabels on our field, this will stop us from being able to be obliterated by a lot of different cards, I guess. So against Tenpai here, we're going to be dealing with Raigeki, back row removal like Duster, Lightning Storm, Heavy Storm. We're going to be dealing with Super Poly now because they have some wiggle room to fit in cards like this. So that's something we have to deal with now. And then, did I say Droplet? I'm going to assume I didn't. Yeah, we'll have to deal with Droplet as well. So that is pretty rough. And Droplet specifically prevents activations and not just negates. So if we have like a card like, I think, Spell Canceller, this only negates spell effects on the field. Spell cards and their effects on the field cannot be activated. Okay, so they cannot be activated on the field, but that means they can be activated from hand, I think. And then that means we could go like Raigeki, Chain 1, Chain 2, Droplet. So Raigeki still resolves, I guess, right? That's pretty irritating. But okay. But what can we do here? Well, being forced into this is not that great, but I forgot one thing actually. Nibiru has been climbing back up in usage again, which is annoying because Vanquished Soul and Kashtira can both fairly play around the Nib very well with the amount of summons they do. So even more irritating that they're just not consistent enough. Like the game plan is not like that insane, but it's pretty well balanced in like just general, I guess, in what you're able to do, in what you're able to interact with. So yeah, this is truly irritating. So all right, in an ideal world, we're going to need to play around Bestials, Golden Lockbird, Maxi, ED Crow. We'll somewhat have to play around Secret Village of the Spellcasters, so this one is not an issue. We just don't need to run that many spells hopefully. So we have like called by, right? And that's probably enough. And then maybe something like a Rota, so we can keep it like around 10 to 5 or maybe less. So we'll see how that goes, but I think pretty much every deck should run called by with few exceptions. And then yeah, we'll have to deal with Super Poly. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7. So it's like 7, 8 cards we have to deal with. Did I count wrong? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 different staples or hand traps that we have to look out for in this meta. So if your deck can't play around like the majority of these, then you're going to be having a really rough time, I guess. So your deck doesn't necessarily need to play around all of these, but it's much better if you can, because it puts your opponent in disadvantage. So Kashtira, can't play that. Consistency bad. Vanquish Soul, same issue. Consistency bad. So what are we left with here? Well, I feel like it's time to dig deep for some potential cards we can play. So immediately, the only reason we're able to maybe play Magispector is that Magispector doesn't care about this, doesn't care about this. It does care about getting trolled, I believe. Maxi, you have to somewhat deal with, but I think there might have been a play. Like, don't quote me on that, but there might be a play you have against Maxi. That play might also be Baguska Pass. Wait. Yeah, it might be Baguska Pass, honestly. Not sure. Ghost Ogre, I don't think can destroy you. Not really. And then you can also play Secret Village, which will play around Super Poly, which you wouldn't have been able to really deal with before. Nibiru, can we play around Nib? No, that's a problem card. We can't play around the Ash either. But I guess Magispector is at least going to be okay. So yeah, we'll just throw a Magispector card in here just to represent that we could play Magispector, you know? Potentially. And we'll look through all the cards here. So let's see. I guess we have Sprite as well. Sprite plays around this well. It does not play around Drone Lockbird super insanely well, but doesn't like get completely gutted by the Droll, I believe, right? Because, well, actually, yeah, you only lose the one search because you only search with mostly either Sprite Blue or Sprite Jet. So there's potential there, and we also have like Zeus plays and stuff. And you really play around the Nibwell and just a lot of these hand traps in general. The worst thing that you could get hit by is just Gamma on your normal summon, and Gamma is now at 1. So people probably have dropped it, and even if they didn't drop it, the odds of you getting hit by that extremely low. In fact, you're more likely to open an extender than your opponent is to open the Gamma, so you're probably chilling because your spray starter's at 2 anyways compared to like a 1 of Gamma. So that's not that big of a deal. Centurion, I believe, is also being played. So if we look at Centurion cards, so this is a Dragon, Dark. This is a Light Spellcaster. This is a Dark Pyro. Yes, Madragon. Okay, so Super Poly is at 3, so I don't want to get sacked by that. And I believe the other guy, the Shooting Majestic, Shooting Quasar, whatever it is, all of those guys are like dragons, I think. So I don't think there's any generic dragon fusion you can make with Super Poly. So you're probably okay. I mean, I would have to check again. I guess it's just only 5-head dragon, right? And I mean, you have this as a dragon, this is a dragon, and then you have the other dragon. I don't think you ever go up to 5. Like, even if you really wanted to flex on someone, you only go 4. So 5-headed dragon doesn't work. unless maybe they also go into Bestials and you go into Bestials. That seems a bit far-fetched. But also, I don't think Centurion's like that insane right now. It's like just kind of okay. So yeah, let's not. And also, like, unlike Cash, if you eat a hand trap, you have no play if you have no extender. If you have an extender, you just go into your full combo, which is like two interactions or so, and then like whatever hand traps you happen to have. So not a real big fan of this one. Unchained. Well, playing around Nib is really horrid in Unchained in my opinion. I mean, you can play around it, but there are decks that play around it better, so for that reason, I don't think we're doing really solid here. And then Chain Soul of Rage and Wave Hiking Caesar. Dark Fiend, Water Fiend. Two monsters with the same attribute, but different types. Two monsters with the same type and attribute, but different names. Yeah, we're okay against Super Poly here. Unless our opponent is playing a dark deck and they normal summon like a dark guy, then in that case, we're super not good into that. And it's a bad time in general. So against a lot of these hand traps, you're doing pretty well. So Droll, you're okay against. Crow is pretty bad actually. Ash Blossom is pretty killer. So in general, I think Unchained looks okay. It's not like, well, it doesn't play around everything here, so it wouldn't be my top pick, but you also play around like Effect Veiler and Imperm. Sometimes if you have like Sharp Aura with certain other cards, but doesn't like fully get there. But you know, in general, it's pretty okay. Altergeist. Let's just scroll past that. Alright. Gold Pride. How many cards do I have for this? Oh, I'm actually close to having all the cards. I think I've pulled like 10 Star Leons. Yeah, now that I think about it, I think I literally have. Well, rough. But okay. Gold Bride. Honestly, having to run all of the cards for the Gold Bride package, I just don't like it, so I'm not going to evaluate if it's playable or not, because it genuinely might. It's hard for me to say. Tenpai. I mean, Tenpai is just Tenpai. It's just going to be... Well, I'm not sure if people are going to target Tenpai as hard as before, but now that I think about it, you can still target this pretty hard. A lot of decks, like if you use the Melodious package, you can make Flame Banshee with them, and then Flame Banshee will enable you to go into either Arch Nemesis Protoss or Eschatos, declaring either Fire or Dragon, whichever your opponent's preferring, or they can simply just go Colossus. And I mean, if people are teching like against me this hard, I think I would just prefer to play something else so I don't get sacked like that. And in general, I much prefer a deck that can play going first and second and not just like one option. I don't like one trick ponies too much for like a more competitive environment. So not really going to be a big fan of the Tenpai here. I mean, I'm not against running maybe like a Tenpai package because Tenpai is actually pretty useful for making level 7 synchros just in general, and doesn't lock you unless you want it to lock you, in which case you could use this for like a dragon deck. But for the most part, I think we're fine not going with Tenpai here. Speaking of which, like, because let's assume Tenpai is going to be meta. Even if Tenpai were meta, I wouldn't want to be playing Tenpai because if everyone is on Tenpai, Tenpai is a going second deck. So that you'll probably lose the majority of the time when you were going first. Because I believe the matchup is going to be favored for whoever is going second here. Like, it's not impossible to win going first, but I want an advantage. I don't want to be in disadvantage ever if possible. So, alright, moving along. Well, yeah, so if we spam like the Stardust Dragon kind of synchro monsters, just playing like Junk Speeder and stuff, uh, Super Volley. All these guys are Wind Dragons, yeah. So that's not great. Moving along. Ice Barrier. I think these guys are somewhat different, but they're just different types, so. My Dragon. I think Ice Barrier is not that great, huh? Barrier of the Voiceless Voice. Super Poly actually doesn't out your guys because if you remove specifically the Skull Guardian, with what conditions? By an opponent's card effect, so a Kaiju would be fine, but if you were to Super Poly away the Skull Guardian, this card here will summon another Skull Guardian and then you just special summon low. And also because you special summon low, you can technically also place Blessing. So honestly, I think you just went neg 2 cards off of this. I mean, I guess your opponent can't target you, but only if you're playing like a water deck, because if you activate Mud Dragon, Mud Dragon's going to be negated. So not looking great. All right. Let's check Labyrinth. Dark Fiend. Garura. Yeah. And then back row removal. And then also like getting hand trap. So it's mostly like this one, and then like these guys. This still affects you as well, and it hurts pretty bad during your setup, right? If you can't get set up, your opponent gets set up, you're not going to win in lab unless you're ahead. Generally, you can't really come back with lab, but like lab once ahead, you can't really come back from either. That's kind of how that deck works. So doesn't look great, I guess. So all right, I guess we'll check Master Duel meta for whatever it says are the top decks right now. Well, might as well. Duelist, Tenpai, Snake Eye Fire King. Yeah, no, I don't think that's that great. Yubel. Well, I think Yubel has issues, right? So, if we get Super Poly, are we that bad? So let's see, the end board would be Phantom of Yubel, Phantom, Apollosa, Unchained Soul of Rage. So this is more or less the standard combo, the standard end board here. Dark Fiend, right? Non-destruction removal as well, so plays around the Yama. And then we can make the Garura. So we still have to face off with the Apo here, I guess. But I mean, it's not absolutely terrible. And Yubel has been hit quite a few times, so it's probably not that good. And then we have the issue with this. And you can actually play around Nib so that this is not an issue. But this is also, I think, an issue. If you get hit by the Cult Bite, it can be pretty bad. So not something I'm really looking forward to, but right now I believe back row decks are at an all-time low. Well, yeah, back row decks not being played that much because they'll get sacked by Tenpai pretty hard, because Tenpai runs a good amount of back row removal. And if they were to really come back in full force, we have Red Reboot to just tech in to all of our decks. So right now, it might not actually be the worst thing in the world, but I mean, still not like insanely great. All right, what else do we have here? Math Mech, Labyrinth, Rika, White Forest, Supreme King, Melodious, Ritual Beast. No. All of them get railed right here, right? Yeah. I think I went over some of them, and yeah, they kind of just get railed by this combination of hand traps. So ideally, we want to play around some of them, Like maybe we can't play around Mexi or Ash Blossom Joe Spring, and I'd be fine with that. If I just have an extender, I'd be able to play through an Ash usually. And with Mexi, if I have like a follow-up play, that would be nice, I guess. Or a really solid kind of line to go for. But right now, I'm not sure. Things are very uncertain to me right now in terms of like what you should play for the Duelist Cup here, because, well, this hand trap lineup and just like the not engine being played is just very powerful to the point where I'm not sure if anything consistent even really exists that can really deal with this. I don't think Vanquish Soul can be like that good unless your opponent plays impatient with like imperms and stuff, because like uh you lose to essentially like every single hand trap with Vanquish Soul. So for example, with Ghost Ogre, you have this play where if you normal summon Razin, your opponent chains the Ghost Ogre, we can chain onto the Razin Borger to add back the Razin to hand, and our Razin won't be destroyed. But if you were to instead Ghost Ogre onto Rock of the Vanquisher, that usually kills the plays for Vanquish Soul in general. They are going first, right? And they have no turn or no play turn 2. So that's an issue. If we imperm the rock, that can stop you from having like any play turn 2. Just in general, pretty rough. You do deal with Super Poly fairly well. Mexi is not like that bad to deal with. Crow on like Rosin, that's actually pretty bad as well. So yeah, I don't have high hopes for Vanquish Soul here. And for Noble, like Warrior Piles, actually not that bad, because you end on multiple Charles, which are the same type and same attribute, but they are the same name, so we can't get Garurud on them. So that's nice, and we can also negate Super Poly anyways with Angelic Ring. So in terms of getting board broken by this, that's not really a threat. You're playing mostly Fires and like some other warriors. You don't really care about Pistols here. I think Crow might still matter, so you can't fully play around that. Ghost Ogre, I think, is... I don't know, actually. I'd have to analyze deeper for Ghost Ogre. Ash Blossom, Joe Spring, Imperm. These can kind of hurt. Depends, I guess. You are like really building around the Isolde here, so you have a really massive choke point. So I'm pretty uncertain, but maybe there's something here with Infernoble. But I'm not sure if it's going to be like that great. And also your turns take very long. So if we are trying to win in well, get a high rank in Duelist Cup phase 2, I'm not sure if Infernoble would be the play, or if there's something that's a little bit better that you can play with like shorter turns. Like for example, Vanquish Soul is a lot faster to play. So not sure about that, I guess. I mean, I might have to take a look at like Dino to see what the end board ends on there. I don't think you can super poly it. From the Dino end board that I remember, but the end board's kind of changed, so I'd have to analyze that. I'm not sure if I would want to play the Zeno Meteorus package or not. Seems kind of like Garnet heavy to me, but whatever. Not seeing anything in particular. DD gets barely railed by the Super Poly, I think, right? You end on... What do we end on? DS Machinex. I Wave King Caesar. So right now, at this point, we're fine. If I also have Gilgamesh, or not... Oh yeah, Gilgamesh. So sometimes I like having Gilgamesh on my end board for reasons. So I guess I can't have Gilgamesh, which is fine. We can just convert that into Theus Machinax. So if we do that, we can't be super polyed, can we? We can if our opponent's playing like a Starving Venom and they're playing Dark, I guess, which we can't really do much about. Hand traps. You can be okay against like Ash and Perm. You're not so okay against like some of these hand traps actually. Kind of situational, really. It is possible to play around this. Play around this. Playing around this is possible as well. This is like very hard to play around. The Imperm. So Imperm Valor, pretty rough. Imperm and Valor, pretty rough. Yeah, Effect Valor's play rate also has probably gone up a good bit, but I mean that's just coincides with like Imperm. So are we so damn bad we're looking for Crooked Cook? Most decks don't fit Underworld Goddess, but at least against Denpai, you win. So that's a plus, and it plays through all of these hand traps. It sure does. You're not summoning more than like 3 times here, and even if this was 5th summon, you know, it's Crooked Cook. This doesn't work. None of these cards actually work. Crooked Cook Exodia. Oh boy. Well, I don't have anything super concrete to show for all this analysis, but I mean, sometimes analysis takes time, I guess, so we have to really look through all of the somewhat viable decks. So yeah, that's probably all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video, I guess. But if you guys have any deck recommendations or ideas, feel free to share them in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.